What's up, Notjust developers? Welcome back to another video. Today, I want to show you the exact tech stack that I use to build and ship applications, and that helped me do this really fast. So in this video, I'm going to share with you the tools, the frameworks that I use, the dev tools, the libraries that help me, and I will give you a little bit more context on the reasoning why I use them and what goes into the decision that I take for a specific library or an alternative. So this way you can learn and adapt this to your own needs so that you can build applications fast and having a lot of fun. This is not some kind of AI generated bullshit. This is actually things that I use. These might not be the best ones, but they work really well together and they help me build applications very fast in today's video. So before we get started, let me tell you a couple of words about myself. My name is Vadim and I started as a teacher assistant at university. I also worked at Amazon. I founded a couple of startups where I learned how to build this mindset of building things fast and iterating quickly. And now at notjust.dev, I teach mobile development here online, and our YouTube tutorials have reached more than 20 million developers, and we have taught more than 1,200 students at Notjust Academy. So I'm also an indie developer. On the side, I'm building my own applications for end users, and I use all of the tools that I'll share today in order to accelerate my development. So if you're ready, let's roll the intro and let's get started. Perfect. So everything here today is going to be around mobile development. I'm focused on mobile development, and more specifically mobile development with React Native. React Native, I've been using React Native for the last probably 7 years, and it's no news that with React Native you can build applications with the same code base for both Android and iOS, but you can also target way more platforms than that. You can build desktop application for macOS and Windows, and you can also build web applications with the same code base as well. These are just some of the platforms that it supports. Even though I have all of these options to work for, in most of the cases, I focus on mobile development for Android and iOS, and in a lot of cases, I actually prefer deploying my application first to iOS marketplace, and only then, if it works, if it's a success, like I deploy it to Android as well. So the benefits of React Native is that it's really close to React and web development, and being close to React and web development, it's easy to switch, like if you're a web developer, to mobile development as well. A lot of knowledge that you have on the web is going to transfer really easily on mobile. And using nowadays AI tools, there is so much more information regarding React and web development that AI tools find it way easier to generate code for this kind of libraries and frameworks. And a bit later, we're going to see how with NativeWind, which is a library for React Native, we are reusing the same knowledge base out there that was built on top of Tailwind CSS that is used on the web. So that's another benefit of using a technology that is super popular, and there is a lot of information around that. You get up-to-date things, and the AI, when using it in your workflow, is going to give you really up-to-date code generation. For the framework using with React Native, I use Expo. React Native is the core, and React Native, even the Meta team is recommending using a framework instead of working barely with React Native, because a framework is going to be responsible of a lot of more things on top of what React Native is responsible for. So Expo is a lot of things. It's the Expo SDK, it's the Expo Go, it's the tons of libraries built by the Expo team that integrate really well together and very easily integrate between each other. They're always kept up to date. And there is also like IDEs, which I'm going to talk a bit later. I also use Expo Router, and from the moment it was released a couple of years ago, I switched to it and I'm always using that. Yeah, Expo Router is built on top of React Navigation, but at the same time, it's a file-based navigation system, and it makes it way easier for me to set up and create my screens and manage my whole navigation aspect of my application. And it also comes with some additional benefits that I don't have to worry or take care of, such as deep linking, for example. Hello everyone who is joining us live. How are you doing, guys? Let me know where are you joining us today from. Moving on, a couple of words about Expo Go. In my development, when I build my own applications, I try to stick and use Expo Go as much as possible. You're going to hear a lot of advice that Expo Go is just like for getting started, or Expo Go is not serious, or stuff like that. But that's not the case. Like, Expo Go is a great tool, and I always suggest starting using Expo Go to run your applications, because at one point you're going to need to build your own development build. But as long as you don't need that, like it's okay to go with Expo Go. And it's actually better because it's faster. You get your application up and running in minutes. You don't have to build anything. You don't have to have an environment set up. At the beginning of a project, you install a lot of libraries. And with Expo Go, if these are common libraries, they are going to run like instantly. But if you have a custom development build, installing every single library that has some native code would require you to build the whole project and waiting like, 5 to 10 minutes. But nowadays, when I can generate like whole applications in like 10 minutes, I don't want to, with AI, I don't want to wait 10 more minutes just to build the application. So that's why I really like sticking with Expo Go for as long as possible. And whenever you need some libraries that has custom native code that is not available in Expo Go, you basically create a development build, which in other words means you build your own version of Expo Go. So think about Expo Go as a browser that can run, as an off-the-shelf browser that can run specific applications. And Expo Go app, the binary, contains a lot of native code that is very common, like camera, file system, permissions, and so on. But whenever it cannot have like everything, so whenever you need something more native code, like a package, a library, or even writing your own native code, in that case, you have to build your own Expo Go or your own browser that is built specifically for your application, that can run your JavaScript application. So that's a couple of words about Expo Go. Moving on to the styling, because I like my applications to look good. And for the styling, more lately, I started using almost every time I use NativeWind. And NativeWind is the possibility of using Tailwind CSS classes in React Native. So with Tailwind CSS classes, like, we apply classes to our components, and behind the scenes, like, these classes contain some common styles. So if you are coming from web and have experience with Tailwind, NativeWind is going to make a lot of sense for you, because you're going to basically reuse all the knowledge that you have from web development here in mobile development. I also encourage to use this plugin for Visual Studio Code, Tailwind CSS IntelliSense, and that is going to give you autocomplete for all the class names. And this is going to speed up a lot the development and the work with these classes, because at the beginning, nobody remembers all of these classes. But as you move and as you use it, you're going to learn, and you're going to become faster and faster at implementing and designing UIs with Tailwind classes in React Native using NativeWind. All right, going next. Hello, Jamie. How are you doing? Hello, Mehar. Hello, Fawn. Going next to the animations. For animations, I always use React Native Reanimated. I'm not sure if there is anyone here using the built-in animation package from React Native. Like Reanimated is really powerful, it's performant, it's well documented, and it unlocks so many possibilities. In the new version of Reanimated 4 that is coming up in the next couple of weeks, we are even going to get CSS animations, which is going to make it so much easier to implement some very simple and common animations in the same way as we did in CSS, with simple like to and from values, and it's going to animate the style of those, or with keyframes to specify different values at different intervals of time. Together with React Native Reanimated, I also use React Native Gesture Handler, and this is specifically when I have to implement some kind of gesture-based interactions, like I don't know, as simple as moving a card or sorting some cards in a screen, some items, or swiping, things like that. Like Gesture Handler works really well, and they're in combination React Native Reanimated and Gesture Handler, like you can build some powerful gesture-based animations. Highly recommend that. Now moving on to the data, and here data mean like how do we manage data in our application. And I always start with the simplest solution, and the simplest solution is use state hook with handling state at the component level. Even in some cases, like with some, like you're going to, in most cases, like you just need that data in one component. Some cases you need it in multiple places. So even with some light props drilling, like sending props back and forth, like it's not going to be the end of the world. So unless you actually need something else, like stick to the use state, it's good enough. Like you don't need to overcomplicate stuff unnecessary. However, if you have a lot of shared data between different screens and you hit these limitations, then there are a couple of solutions. You might think already about like, okay, I need a global state management library, but I would ask you a couple of questions. That's usually what happens during our coaching sessions with my students, is that they are saying like, hey, like what global state management library do I need? And before I give them an answer, I ask about like what kind of data are you managing? Because in most of the cases, you are managing server state, like data that is being fetched from your backend. And what you have to do on your client is just to make sure that you keep it in sync and you cache it locally so that you have access to it in different parts of the screen. So the source of truth for that data is the backend, and your client is simply fetching the data and then is sending mutations. It's sending updates to that data, and the updates are happening actually on the backend, not on the front end. And after the updates happens, like you need to resynchronize and make sure that everything is kept fresh in your cache. So if that's your case, like if most of your data is server data, then you don't need a global state management library. What you need is a tool like Tanstack Query. I use Tanstack Query to manage and cache all of remote data. And yeah, Tanstack Query works in a way as I described before. It helps us query data from our server, and it caches the responses. So the data that we receive is going to be cached. So if you send the same request from different screens, it's not going to reach the server twice. It's in a lot of cases, it's going to just simply use it from the cache, and it's going to avoid hitting the server unnecessary. We have a lot of configurations there with Tanstack Query, like how long do you want the data to be considered to be considered fresh in the cache, or when it should be invalidated and refetched from the backend. It has automatic retry, so if a network request fails, it's going to retry it up to like 5 times by default, but you have like a lot of configurations on how this happens, and it's really powerful because it's thought out. It's really thought out, and it becomes like the industry standard for managing server state. So if you haven't already, give it a try, because after I recommend Task Query to some of our students and they integrated it, they say like, yeah, it's exactly what I was looking for, but I didn't even know like that I need it. Now, on the other hand, if the data that you're managing is local, then you actually need a global state management. Local data is data that lives on the device, like the state of a long checkout form with multiple pages where you collect this information, or the state of some complex canvas where you draw stuff and you need to store this information locally before you save it somewhere else. The state of some models or pop-ups or things like that. If you have that, then yeah, you might need a global state management, and I highly recommend you to check out Zustand. I use it. It's really easy to use, easy to set up, very powerful and performant. In some cases, Jotai is even simpler, and Jotai has a little bit of a different concept behind it. Where is it? Because it works like, while Zustand works with selectors and mutations or actions, Jotai basically at a very simplistic level is the same use state call, but outside your component. So you just take the use state hooks and they become global. So they are called atoms, and you can have like derived data. So in cases where you just need like a really simple state that you need to be shared in different parts, like you can use Jotai. And in some cases you can even combine them. And Jotai, and both Zustand and Jotai, is built by the same developers, by the same people, company, but they have different like philosophy of how to implement and how to use it. And Jotai is way simpler. All right. How to directly connect two child components without prop drilling and without global state management. And Jamie is answering. Two siblings child component isn't drilling. Even going down 2-3 layers maximum is still fine in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, to connect like the state, to connect two child components, you need to declare the state at the parent component and send it down. Send both the value and the updaters down to the components. And sometimes, like you have to do it like a couple of layers. And as Jamie said, like if your application is really simple, like if you have like a couple of screens, a couple of these cases of prop drilling, it's totally fine. Like don't overcomplicate it unnecessary. Of course, if you're building a big application and it starts becoming overly complex, like you have a lot of props that you're sending down, maybe it's time to refactor it and to implement this global state management, or even a context. In some cases, a context is also super fine as well. Redux versus Zustand, what will be better? I'd recommend going with Zustand. Jotai versus Recoil. Jotai is very similar to Recoil because they have the same idea behind them. But Recoil, as far as I know, like I really loved the concept, but it has kind of been abandoned for a very long time. So in Recoil, the last commit was 2 years ago. I'm not sure if Recoil is is getting any updates. But recoil is also great. And on Viber, recoil has 19k stars, and Jotai might have less, but it's more repository. It's 20k stars. So yeah, Jotai has a little bit more stars, but last commit was 2 weeks ago, while recoil was 2 years ago. So it looks like it's more actively maintained at the moment. Only one issue in Jotai, and recoil 255. So I think you can, and recoil was even archived. I didn't know that, but yeah, it was an experiment. I really like it, and I think like Jotai took inspiration from it. Not sure like which one came first, but yeah. What about performance for context versus global state management? Yeah, like with context, you can get into some performance issues. But again, some cases I would start there, and you're going to see that you're totally fine, because, yeah, like it depends on how many times you are updating this state. Especially for state that is not changing super often, using a context is going to be super fine. Yeah, like if there is state that is changing a lot, it will cause our components to re-render unnecessarily. So there is like this balance. So yeah, that's why like depending on your skills, where you are at, like, and how overly complicated you want to make the application, you can balance these things. All right, let's move on to the next topic. I see a lot of questions about global state management. We're gonna have a Q&A session at the end, and if there are gonna be more questions, please leave them in the chat, and I can get into them in a second. Now I want to go to the next topic, and this is about forms and how I manage forms. And again, I'll do a disclaimer. Like, first of all, I manage forms in a very easy and simple way with simple state. If a form has like 2 fields, using state is going to be fine. However, if the forms are large, if there is a lot of state to them, like invalidation, error messages, error states, and so on, in that case you're going to find that managing it with purely state is going to be a little bit hard. Like, you're going to have to define so many state fields for values, for errors. You're going to manage them. You're going to forget to reset them when you submit. So it's going to get a little bit messy, like if the forms are growing in size. So in that case, I always use React Hook form, only when the forms are a little bit more complicated, not overcomplicated necessarily. With React Hook form, like, I can manage the state of my forms, I can validate them, I can manage the error fields, error states, and it becomes so much easier to manage them. I use Zod to create schema-based validation rules. So with Zod, I define the schema of what the form data should look like and what are the validation rules. For example, like with Zod, I can say the name should be minimum 2 characters and maximum 10 characters. The password should have like a special character, or the repeat password should match the password, or the email should be unique in the database. So with Zod, I can even do a call to my database to make sure that it is unique when I validate it. So I can do everything here with one schema of Zod that describes how I want my data to look like and what error messages I want to display if the data does not match that schema. And then I hook that into the React Hook form, and it works beautifully because with Webhook form I manage the state, but with Zod I manage like what I expect it to look like. And keyboards are something that we always have to deal on mobile. If a keyboard is getting on top of a form, that's not very user-friendly. So I encourage you to check out React Native Keyboard Controller to manage properly the keyboard and the padding that you need to create, like when the keyboard is visible. All right, so that was forms. Moving on to the backend. All right, so on the backend, again, I always have this mindset of not overcomplicating stuff unnecessarily. That's the same case with the backend. Like I'm thinking like what kind of backend an application will need. First of all, I'm thinking, does it even need a backend? And if it doesn't, I'm building a local application, storing in a local, persisting the state, persisting the Zustand store, or if it has like a little bit more data, even using a local database like SQLite directly on the phone. And that's it. That's what I go with for my first versions. If, however, I need a backend, but the backend is very small, like maybe I need a backend just for integrating with an AI model like OpenAI, Anthropic, and so on. Or if the backend doesn't have to do anything with AI, but it's really small, like a couple of endpoints, a couple of functions. In that case, I wouldn't go into overcomplicating my backend or building it from scratch. I would simply use API routes and build my server endpoints directly in my Expo project. And that has a benefit because I have everything in the same project. I don't have to manage a different project. I don't have to start all from scratch. I can do everything there in the same project, and then I can use EAS hosting, and in a couple of, like in I think 2 commands, I build my web target, and then I deploy it to EAS hosting, and I have a production ready endpoints for my API route. So the backend becomes like super easy to do it this way. However, if I have a more complicated backend, if I need like authentication accounts, database, like a more complex database, like maybe a lot of functions, edge functions where like I need to do a lot of work on the data or background jobs and so on. In that case, I use Supabase. With Supabase, it's built on top of Postgres. It's very powerful. It's very easy to set up. It just has everything that I need for most of the projects that require a more complex backend. So yeah, that's the backend. Now, speaking about dev tools, here are some of the tools that I use. There are not a lot, like I don't use a lot of like tools, or maybe I forgot about them, and you can remind me like if you heard me talk about something. But what I use more recently very often is Cursor for my editor of choice, and Cursor is basically Visual Studio Code. It's a fork of Visual Studio Code that has AI features to it. So it has really good like interface to generate code in multiple files, and it has like the context of your whole project. Then I also use Radon IDE, which is extension for Visual Studio Code and for Cursor as well, that has an integrated IDE specifically for React Native. So you have the simulator inside your Visual Studio Code. You have debugging possibilities. You have easy way to manage your application, to work with it, to debug, to inspect elements, to navigate between screens, and much more. So highly encourage you to give it a try. Now, when it comes to when I finish my applications and I have to build and deploy them, I use EAS, Expo Application Services, and they have EAS build that helps me build my applications in the cloud for both iOS and Android. And nowadays, like for the builds for iOS, take as low as like 4 minutes, which is super fast. Then after I build my projects, I submit them using EAS Submit, and this manages like all the complexity of the signing of the binaries, of connecting to the source, of sending that information there. And after I do submit, there is also EAS Update. And with EAS Update, I can send, like if you enable them or if you integrate EAS Updates, you can send over-the-air updates to your applications running on end users' devices. Because without EAS Update, like if you have to fix a critical bug or you want to add a small feature, as simple as changing the color of a button, what you have to do is you have to code this, you have to build it, waiting on some machines like 20 minutes. Then you have to submit it to the store. Then you have to submit it for review. And then Apple review or Google review is going to take like at least 1 day. And that means that a small change from the moment you code it to the moment that it reaches the end user might take a couple of days for this to happen. So this makes the iterations over your project like really, really slow. That's why we need a faster way. So a faster way would be using over-the-air updates, and more specifically with EAS Update. With EAS Update, like if the change that you're doing is something on the JavaScript layer, what you can do is simply using EAS Update, send this update to your end users. What does that mean? That means that the JavaScript code is going to be bundled. It's going to be hosted somewhere on EAS on Expo servers. Then the next time your end user will open your application, it's going to open the application as it was in the past. But behind the scenes, it's going to check with the Expo servers to see, hey, do you have an update? Expo servers will say, yes, here it is. And the end user will download the new JavaScript bundle, all the JavaScript code there. And the next time he closes the application and opens it again, he's going to see the update, the new color, the bug fix, the critical bug fix that you have done, and so on. And this all happens like in minutes compared to days when you have to build and submit to the stores. In this case, you don't have to submit or rebuild your application because everything is sent over the air, over the internet. This, however, doesn't work when you do some changes on the native side. If, for example, you install a library with new native capabilities, native code, or if you change some settings on the native side, for example, permissions or some kind of native side strings for permissions and things like that. In that case, you'd still have to rebuild and submit it through the App Store, but that's totally fine because you're gonna do that a little bit less often compared to simple JavaScript side changes. So, highly encourage you to set up Expo updates. It takes really no time, like I know a couple of minutes to install the library, and then you're going to be able to send these updates over the air. And when you have a critical bug, it's going to make the difference. Like you're going to be able to fix the bug and send the update fast. Now, some kind of AI tools or large language models that I'm using in my application, and it's both like for coding, but mostly like actually integrating in my applications. I use OpenAI in some cases. I use Claude by Anthropic, and Claude is better at writing. Claude is better at code generation. Yeah, give it a try. These are the two that I use most of the time. I also work and I've done a lot of research for models that I can use to generate images. And what I found that works best for me is this Flux model from, if I'm not mistaken, Black Forest Lab. They are company specialized in research and development for image generation. So yeah, I tried different models, but Flux was one of the better ones that I found that work for my application. So if you need to generate some images, check it out. Maybe it's going to save you some research time. Like I spent like probably one day trying over so many things, and all of them have like subscriptions, but I needed just to generate like, I don't know, 1,000 images, and that's it. So with Flux, I was able to pay for credits and just use them as I wished to. Then for everything related to audio, I use 11 Labs. I was happy with how it performed, like with documentation, the different variations in voices and different models that they are providing. And when it comes to AI, I also use LangChain when I have to orchestrate some kind of a little bit more complex agents, other than simple like prompting an AI model. But if I want to do some kind of agentic workflows, I use LangChain. Okay, gave it a try. Like it works well for me, and it's simply lovely. All right, so going into some tools that I use, and these are like tools. For example, I use Vexo for analytics. Sometimes I also use Amplitude for cases where I need like way more control over the data. But Vexo is really easy to install and set up, and it gives you all the necessary things and data about the usage of your application. And you need analytics tools because you need to know what's happening in your application if you want to understand like how it's performing. You also need crash reporting tools, and I use Sentry for that. And why do you need it? Well, because once you ship the application, you have no idea what's happening with it on the end user's devices. Because it might work for you, but it might crash for everyone else, and then you start receiving bad feedback or negative reviews, and you have no idea what happened, why it's crashing on end user devices. So that's why you need a tool like Sentry. There are others as well, but I started using Sentry and I was happy with it. And it basically gives you all the stack traces whenever the application crashes, whenever things fail in our application. It also tracks some performance metrics, so you know like how fast your application is loading, how slow it is. I don't know. Other tool that I use in some cases where I need to build chatting or audio and video experiences is the GetStream. And with GetStream, like it takes me 1 hour to build a fully functional chatting experience or audio video calls. Like it's very easy, like, and I don't want to write all the code for a chatting application because that would be inside. That would be like a couple of years project. So with Stream, like I just integrate it and I have like everything I need for a chat to have. And finally, about monetization. What do I use for monetization? I obviously use RevenueCat to manage in-app subscriptions. RevenueCat basically sits between your application and Google Play and Apple App Store, and it's managing like the subscription data for your users. It's also a way to centralize all the subscription analytics in one place. So yeah, it's really great. In cases where I don't need in-app subscription or payments, I'm using Stripe. And with Stripe, for example, if you're building an e-commerce application, it's very easy to integrate Stripe. I mean, it's not super easy. Like let's not let's not do that. Like it's not super easy, but it's possible and it's powerful, and it's available for React Native as well. So you can implement like Stripe for purchases like e-commerce, like in e-commerce apps and so on. Now, let me know if I missed anything, because that was my most common tools and frameworks that I've been using. I would really love to get into a Q&A session, so please let me know your questions here. But before we continue, I just wanted to remind you that there is a couple of more days for you to enroll in the summer bootcamp. We're starting the summer bootcamp on 16th of June, which is in a couple of days, and we're going to learn most of the things that you saw in today's video, like the tools, everything. Like we're going to learn how to build full stack mobile applications. So it's 8 weeks. We're starting on June 16th, and it's 8 weeks of intensive React Native learning. You're going to be coached by me and the Notjust development team together with Lucas. We are starting 16th of June all the way to 10th of August, and it's only going to be for 25 students in order for us to be able to give you a lot of personalized coaching during this experience. There is going to be weekly milestones, so you're going to be kept accountable, because what we saw is that in a lot of cases people buy courses, they start them and they never finish. And we want to fix this problem by having weekly milestones and helping you whenever you get stuck, whenever you hit a roadblock. We're going to be there to help you. And whenever you you need a little push, we're going to be there to motivate you to continue to follow for the 8 weeks of learning. Let me give you a quick idea of how a week during the bootcamp is going to look like. I'm going to do that based on the week 5, because during that week you're going to be like a local first application, a local first fitness tracker. So on Monday you're going to get access to the module. Every week has its own topic, and this week, week 5, is about local first architecture. You're going to watch the video lessons on your own, and you're going to build the project, the fitness tracker. On Thursday, we're going to have live workshops on more advanced topics based on the topic of the week, and then you're going to also work on a homework assignment. You're going to, in this case, build a local first habit tracker. So everything that you learned in the video lessons, you're going to apply on a separate project on your own. It's going to be like a very interesting challenge for you to see if you understood everything from that week, and it's going to also help you practice and make sure you solidify the learnings. On Sunday, by Sunday, you're going to submit the solution and you're going to get detailed code review from me and Lucas. And on Monday, the following Monday, you're going to join group coaching calls with me, where you can ask me anything. We can go more in depth into the topics of the previous week. We can discuss implementations, or if I see there is some common challenge, we can explain it and cover more details about that. So what exactly do you get by joining the bootcamp? First of all, you get the curriculum from React Native Mastery, the same curriculum that already helped more than 250 students, the same curriculum that we've been working on for the last more than 1 year. You get 8 weeks of direct access to me and the notjust.dev team. You get weekly group coaching calls. You get exclusive workshops, a private community with the other 24 students, and a certificate and a portfolio at the end. While most of the traditional bootcamps cost from 5,000 to 15k euros, the summer bootcamp is just 997 euros. And the best part is there is also a 30 days money back guarantee. So if you see that after 30 days this is not for you, you can tell me and no question asked, we're going to refund you the whole amount. We also have some early bird discounts. Two of them are already sold out. There is the 15% discount using SB15 code. There were 5 discounts in the morning. Probably there are few less now, and they're going quite fast. So make sure that you enroll now if you are interested in, because next week on Monday we have our first call. Enrollment closes on June 15th. That's 3 days from now. And you can enroll by following the link in the description or by going to notjust.dev/bootcamp. Thank you very much. Now let's see if we have any questions. So, Jotai is same as Redux. Jotai is not the same as Redux. It's completely different concept. I would say that Zustand is a little bit closer to Redux, but still, like, it's very different. I have been Jeremy is saying I have been using Redux and Redux toolkit query for quite some times. Does Zustand or Tanstack query also provide a way you can work with API endpoints and global state management? So with Tanstack query, you are working with endpoints, like with backend endpoints. Basically, like Tanstack query doesn't care where you get your information from. You just simply provide a function that will fetch asynchronous data, which you can do with simply fetching your endpoint, and Tanstack query is going to cache it. Peter is saying, for example, I have a search context in my application that keeps changing state because I'm using a debounce hook to track input. Due to the changing of data at every input, will this cause performance issues? Search context. I need to look at the whole application. Yes, like this can be a cause for performance issues because every time you type, it's going to re-render everything, and it also depends on what is going to re-render. Like if the components that you are re-rendering are heavy, it might affect the performance, and you're going to see it on the input having some delays. But at the same time, like, if you do not see any performance issues, test it on a lower end Android, and if it works okay-ish, just go with it. What do you think about Better Off? I didn't try it. We choose Tanstack for building mobile application, but how to design UI? How to design UI? I'm not a UI designer, so in a lot of cases I just use the AI code generators to generate my UI. For example, I might use Cursor to say, like, build me this application in a modern style with this kind of buttons, with this kind of colors, and it just does that for me. For some reason, yeah. Hey guys, quick question. Do you think that the new architecture is already production ready or no? Yes, it's production ready. It's stable, so try to update and see if everything is working in your application. Because the only challenge is going to be like if you're using some packages that are not yet migrated. Hi Vadim from Argentina. Any tool to plan tasks, features? I get blocked all the time. Not sure what my next feature I should focus on. Oh, that's another tool that I use very often, both in my development journey and in managing the whole notjust.dev team, and that's Notion. So with Notion, I keep track, I structure my tasks, I keep track of their status, I write documentations, I do everything in Notion. So check it out, like if you haven't already, Notion is great. Hello, Julio from Denver, Colorado. How are you doing? Any library to handle export data in Excel files? Thank you. Oh, I don't know. Maybe you can export it in CSV, and then you can import CSV into Excel, because CSV is comma separated values. So I think it's super easy to export a CSV file. You just group everything together, you separate them with a comma, and you separate new lines or different lines with a new line, and that's it. Jamie is asking how often is the calls and which package levels includes them. So the bootcamp is just one package level. So if you go to the bootcamp, notjust.dev bootcamp, there is just one level. It's a bootcamp access. And in terms of amount of calls, we're gonna have a weekly group coaching call. Where is it? On Monday, we have a group coaching call. And Thursdays, but not every Thursday, we're gonna have a live workshop. And the live workshop, you're going to have replays. So actually, like it's only like on Monday that you have to join. And Thursday, we're going to go live on Zoom and we're going to present. We're going to show you something more advanced. So this is the 2 meeting points during the week. But we're also going to have a community. So you can ask us at any point in time, like if you have any questions, and we're going to be there to help you. Do you have for Francophone section? I might sound very stupid, but I need to double check what is Francophone. Is it French? French speaking. No. Like most of the things are in English. Sorry, I meant for React Native Mastery. For React Native Mastery, it's the ultimate package that has the calls. All right, so that was my tech stack. I hope you found this video helpful. And if you're interested, make sure to join the bootcamp, and we're gonna start next Monday. And we're gonna follow with 8 weeks of intense learning and building amazing applications. Cannot wait to see you there. And by the way, tomorrow we also have a Zoom private workshop. So if you're watching here, you might be interested in that as well. Let me quickly find the link. Tomorrow. Yeah, here is a link to register for tomorrow's Zoom session. I'm going to share with you like my strategy of how I want to build 10 applications by the end of the year. Like more strategic things, like what I'm going to do, how I'm going to research keywords, how I'm going to approach the applications, I'm going to stay on track, and so on. If you're interested, make sure to sign up through the link that I sent in the chat, and I'll see you there. Thank you for joining, and have a nice day.